Hello everyone. We did it. We made it to the end. Some amount of weeks worth of classes. I don't know how many classes we had. More than 3. So today we're going to kind of do a review. Just going to kind of jump around. I'll start with some logistics. I will talk through a few of the questions that people missed from test 1 and test 2, and you can expect stuff like that on the exam. And then, we'll just kind of jump around about things that I think people will miss. Basically the big questions, the big categories, stuff like that. I won't specifically, it doesn't guarantee that a question I did today is going to show up on there. But it's a pretty good chance that the stuff let's be real. Anytime y'all do a review, the review usually matches the test in a lot of ways. Not all the ways, but there's a reason reviews are, I'm not going to waste your time. So a few things to mention, lots of things. Hopefully I don't forget them all. First thing, as far as studying for this test, a reminder to you all, so I'm not gonna make a summary of what was on test 1. I'm not gonna make a summary of what was on test 2 because I already made those. They already exist. You can go and find those there, they exist, so make use of them. Same thing for test 2. It already exists. There's a nice summary of all the major points. You can think of it like a checklist. Go through that checklist and make certain you can do all those things. If any part of it looks unfamiliar, find problems in that category. That's a great way to kind of prepare for this. And then I did one for optics last class. So everything's got a nice little summary PowerPoint of all the major topics you need to know. Test 1, test 2, and optics. That's what the final will be on. The final is going to be 40 questions. 40 questions, multiple choice. Not too much to say there. The difficulty level will be similar to the last test. There will be some problems that are a little bit more difficult than the multiple choice in previous tests to make up for the lack of free response. So I kind of drew this picture before for someone, and I think it's kind of helpful. So if I make a quick drawing of the distribution of difficulty. So if the top is difficulty and the bottom is the number of questions, if this was like the previous tests, where you have some questions that are really easy, some in the middle, some hard, this one is just like that, just slightly shifted. Most of them fall within both, but there'll be some that are a little bit more difficult just to make up for that not having the free response in this one. So comparing the multiple choices, there's that. Okay. I've gotten some emails about the assessment. So the assessment, unfortunately, so let me just clarify. It should be open sometime today. Let's just make that clear. So the assessment, that gives you plus 1% bonus points on the whole class. It adds 1% to your grade, your final grade. That will be open sometime today, so I've heard. I have zero control over this thing. I don't even have access to the web courses that you all taking it. It's its own thing that I have zero access to, zero influence on. They ask if we do it. I say yes. So they said it should be open today. There has been some delays. They sent out an email about that, yada, yada. I will also tell you, and I sent this in the announcement today. So again, sometime today, if it's not open tomorrow, send me an email. Because again, I have literally no way to check when it's open. I have no access to this thing. So if it's not open by tomorrow, send me an email and I'll lovingly harass them to make it available. I'm warning you that the questions on this are cryptic. I'm going to use the word cryptic. They are not going to match the questions that I am asking you. They need a lot bit more polish on them. Let's put it that way. So when you're taking this assessment thing and you're like, what is going on? Just finish the assessment and move on with your life kind of thing. Do not take it. Do not use this assessment in its current form as a measure of whether you know the content. Okay? I really want to make that clear. I was looking through the questions and I was like, this does not match the way I have prepared you, and so it is not going to be a good measure for you to determine whether or not you know what's going on. So to that end, there is some stuff in there that you might be like, oh, okay, kind of remember this. But as you're taking, I just don't want you all to freak out, because that's what's going to happen. People are going to take this and be like, well, I didn't learn this, like, what is going on? This doesn't look like, yeah, I haven't made any of these questions. I have not touched any of these questions. I've had zero impact on these questions. I hope in the future to have some input on that assessment to smooth it out a little bit, we'll call it. It's a little rough around the edges. So, really just want to make that clear. Don't freak out when you're taking it. Take it, get the point, take out of it what you take out of it, but it needs a little bit of polish. TLC. They're calling it beta testing. Let's just put it that way. Beta testing is rough. But you get the free 1% no matter how you do. So, there you go. All right, so that's covered. Reminder for like the millionth time, your test is a week from today at 4 o'clock, not 4:30. We'll start with or without you. If you show up at 4:30, I'll still let you in. But if you show up at 5:30, I'll still let you in. If you show up at 6 o'clock, I'll still let you in. I don't care when you show up. But you get as much time as is what's left. You will not have enough time at 6 o'clock. All right. The other thing I want to mention is in web courses, you have the thing where you can input grades. You can like say, hey, if I get this grade, what is my final grade? That does not account for 2 of my course policies that help you out. So I have 2 course policies that there is no way I can program web courses to do this. That is specifically, I take the final and replace the lowest test grade if it's helpful. So if your lowest test grade is lower than what you get on the final, it replaces that. I also calculate your grade with and without clicker questions and take the higher of the 2. There's no way for me to program that into web courses, so I made a wonderful Excel spreadsheet where it does that for you. I had to make a separate thing entirely, so I made that. And I just want to walk through how you can use, like, just to make certain you know how to use this if you want to use it. You don't have to use it, but it works. So, in web courses, you can see your grades. So I'm in the student view, so everything's kosher. There is, according to the syllabus, the grade is broken down as follows. 10% of the grade is from the discussion section. 7% of the grade is homework. 8% is clicker questions. 20% is final. 30% is midterms. 25% is the adjusted quizzes. And I don't know why it says adjusted quizzes twice. That's weird. I need to look into that. That's unusual. That's not inflating people's grades. Either way, so let me actually not, that's the first time I've seen that. I don't know why that's shown up twice. Your grade is not calculated out of 125%. So I'll fiddle with that at some point. But what's important is these categories up here. These ones. So I'm going to fix that, and it's probably going to rock some people's grades, not because the grades were well, I don't know why it's double counting quizzes. I'll fix it. Either way, this spreadsheet works. So what you're going to do is you're going to go down, scroll to the bottom, and you will take the percentage grade from each category and plug it in. Take the percentage grade from your discussion and plug it in. Take the percentage grade from the homework, plug it in. Clicker questions total, plug it in. Adjusted quizzes. So let's just pretend like you got 70% in your discussion. You did all the physics I care about. You got 100% there. Currently, you have a 60% for clicker questions. Adjusted quizzes, 90%. You have to put your grades in for each test because I need those to determine whether this program, this thing I wrote, needs to know your test grades so I can determine whether or not the final replaces them. So you have to put the individual test grades in here. So say you got an 80% on test 1 multiple choice. And you got an 85% on the test 1 free response. On the test 2 multiple choice, didn't go as well. You got a 60% for the multiple choice, and you got a 70% for the free response. Okay, you put in all the things. All the red boxes are gone. It shows you your current grade in the class with and without clickers before the final. So this is accurate to what your current grade is, mostly. Then at the bottom here, it shows you your current grade in the class if you don't take the final. It's not great because you haven't taken the final. It's worth 20% of your grade. So yeah, that's going to kill your grade. You then put what make up numbers. Say you want to see if I got a 70% on the final, what will my grade be? You put a 70% in, it shows your grade with clickers and without clickers. Remember, I take the one that's higher. In this case, it's without clickers. And you see the final letter grade. And let me purposefully pick something a little lower. Too low. All right, great. 69. Unfortunately, I had to pick that number for a reason. That was not for memes. This shows your grade overall. And again, I picked the one without clickers because it's higher. It does all of this for you. It automatically is determining whether or not to replace one of your test grades. It is automatically calculating the grade with and without clickers. On the math paper, you can see whether or not it's replacing a test grade. Here it says yes. So it replaced you can see the 2 average test grades. It replaced the lower one with the 69, whatever. Something else I want to point out here, and this is very important. At the end of the year, every professor ever always gets the question, Professor, I got a 79.4. That's so close. Can you round that up? Here's what I'm going to tell you all. Here's what I'm going to do. Notice this grade is a 79.13. Notice that the letter grade is a B. What I'm going to do, and this is the most I will do, I will round up. No matter what, I will round up. You have a 79.0001, it rounds up to an 80. If you have a 78.9, that rounds up to a 79. Okay? I will round your grade to the highest. I'll round it up to the nearest whole number. And that is the most I will do. If you have a 78.99999, that will be a 79, which is a C. If you have an 88.9, that is an 89, that is a B. If you have an 89.1, that rounds up to a 90. That's an A. So that is what I'm doing. That's my kind of like little bit of wiggle room, but I will not go any further than that. So I inevitably will still get emails asking, hey, I got this. Can you round up? Well, can you bump it up? No. Nothing more. And so I will, after the test on Thursday, during the weekend, I will tabulate all the grading things. And I have so much fun things I have to look at. But I will do it like this assessment. I'll need to add 1% to everyone. I will need to calculate everyone's grades for the lowest test grade getting dropped and the clickers and all that stuff. There's a bunch of things I'll have to do, but I will do it. I will then upload all that information. I will change your lowest test grade to match the final, if your final is higher than the lowest test grade. I will update all your grades in web courses, hopefully by the end of the weekend, and then it will show you in web courses, everything is in there. You can see the points you got in every single category. And the whole purpose of that is just to show so you can double check that there's no mistakes. I will not add any points or take away any points unless there is a mistake. Okay? That is the only reason I am doing that, is because, look, I'm going to be double, triple, quadruple careful, but I want to give you all the opportunity to check things for yourself as well, to make certain I did a decent job. You know, it's like that final review for anything you do in life. Someone builds you a house, they have you come and check their work to make certain they did everything. I will upload and let you all check my work to make certain it's accurate to what it should be. But I will only change things if something is wrong, not because it's not what you want it to be. So, just to clarify that is what I will do. And to that end, I will... How am I going to show the grade? I think I can change... I'm going to have to look into this. I think in web courses I can define the grading schemes. So I'll define a 79... to 100 as a B, I will define an 89 to 100 as an A, a 79 to an 89 as a B, so on and so forth. So it should also show your letter grade. I'm pretty sure I can do that. Because the reality is when I input your grades into, when I submit your grades to UCF, I don't put a number. I say they got an A, they got a B, they got a C, they got an A, they got a, I just give you a letter grade. Based on these criteria. I can upload a spreadsheet and then it just spits out a letter grade. But you all will get to see the exact percentage you got as well. UCF generally doesn't tell you all that. All right. Any questions on this? Again, it looks like I'm gonna have to go in and like, I don't know why it's double counting adjusted quizzes, but I'll look into that. Any other questions about grading or anything in this nature? Yeah.
The textbook affordability.
Oh yeah, that'll get added. That's another thing we gotta do. Yeah, that's another thing I'll have to do. Yeah, so there's another, if you did the text, so there's a survey that got sent out about a textbook affordability thing. Anytime there's research on stuff like that in areas about improving, I'm of the mindset, why pay for a textbook when there's in my physics class I don't use a textbook, so I think it's great to give you all a book use it if you want. So to that end, I like that kind of stuff. I always thought college textbooks are way too expensive. Everyone's got different mentality on it. So anyway, I want to support that. If you all do that textbook affordability survey, on the last test I will add 2%. But that, again, I have to wait till that's done, and then I'll get so that'll all happen, all of that stuff. Basically, I'm not going to touch the grades until after the final at this point, unless you email me about a specific concern or something like that. After the final, I'll start doing all of that stuff and add all those things, and then you can go back and double check to make certain it matches what it should. You had a 68 on the test and it jumped up to a 70, that should, So, okay, good question. Anything else? All right. The clicker questions have not been updated since test 2. So again, there's some things I still have to update. That's why the current grade is not 100% accurate, but it's pretty darn close. There's a few manual things I just have to do that can't be automated easily. But your grade currently should be pretty close. And again, you can play around with this and see what you need to get. Originally, I was going to try to make something that showed you what final grade you need to get a certain A, B, C, D, but the algebra was going to be disgusting, and so I said, I'll let you all just randomly put numbers in until it works. Saved me a lot of time. So anyway, play around with this, or don't, I don't care, it exists. And now I got to use it for any other class as well. So it's for your benefit to play around with things. Okay, awesome. Showed that. See if there's any other logistics stuff. Discussions are done. I think that's it. All right. Cool. All right, so review time. We're at the end, y'all. So at this point, I'm going to go over. Let me just quickly remind you all. So the same formula sheet you've been using is the same one you're always going to be using. Let me actually open WebCourse real quick because I think this is the best summary of all. So remember, that's my high school one. So we have had 11 weeks worth of content. Every single week is going to be worth equal weighting. So 40 questions divided by 11, that's the average question per week. A very useful thing is one, looking at those test reviews, but two, I labeled every week with the topic. So this is all the stuff that's physics 1. I was like, what's going on here? All right, you do not need to know one-dimensional motion, 2D kinematics. If you're having PTSD, it's okay. It's over now. What you do need to know is charges in electric field in Gauss's law, electric potential, capacitance resistance, current in circuits, DC circuits, magnetic fields and sources of magnetic fields, Faraday's law, electromagnetic waves, optics. If any of those you're like, ooh, I don't remember that too. That's a good way to determine what to study, is the things you look at, like, if you can't think of a problem from that section, that's a good one to look at. Now, to that end, so final review. What questions were missed on previous tests? Let's start there. So, one of the major questions that was missed across both exams was, for electric fields, there's a special device where the electric field is constant. For magnetic fields, there's a special device where the magnetic field is constant. So the question that people missed from test 1, let's just order this from test 1. So from test 1, one of the problems was infinite planes, i.e. slash capacitors. Specifically, what do you all need to know? Capacitors. The electric field doesn't depend on location / distance. So what do I mean by that? So the question I specifically asked, you know what? Let's just put the question here. What happens to the electric field if I move twice as far away from an infinite plane? So what happens to my electric field if I move twice as far away? How do we answer that? Anytime I ask you what happens to this if I change this, you find the equation that relates those. Now, the thing that's funky about this equation, the equation for the electric field due to an infinite plane is sigma over epsilon naught, which is the charge per area over epsilon naught. Distance is nowhere in that equation. R, nowhere in that equation. There's literally so here's my plane. It has some area, and all I said is I went from here to here. What happens to the electric field? It's the exact same. It's the exact same. What if I move over here? Oh, it's the same. What if I move down here? Oh, same. Up here, same. The electric field is the same everywhere. And why is this concept important? Because it's the reason we make capacitors. And capacitors, any single electrical circuit you will ever look up will have capacitors in it. Capacitors, resistors, and inductors are the three main electrical components to every circuit. There's also transistors, but that's a whole nother ball game that you all don't need to worry about. But if you'll ever look at an electrical circuit, a breadboard circuit, let's just actually look at electronic circuit. Let's just pull up a random picture and see if I can spot one. Let's see how I think that's one. Let me find a good picture that shows kind of a holistic one. I'm pretty confident. They make them look a little different than you'd expect. This little red guy right here is a capacitor. Resistor. There's transistors and stuff like that. So that's a capacitor. That's a capacitor. Let's see if this one's got some goodies on it. Yeah, that's a capacitor right there. These big old tubes. They may be inductors. So yeah, these big old things on it are very often capacitors. They're very, very important to how electronics work. They're in every single piece of electronics, basically. Some of the smaller circuits are hard to tell, but generally they're there. So, whether or not you mess with electronics, it is a key part of electronics. So, to that end, the infinite plane is very, very important. All right, what else was missed? I was actually kind of surprised about this one. What is the energy stored in a capacitor with charge 70, I don't know, I'm just going to make up numbers. 30 e to the minus 6, I don't want to look for the Greek letter micro, coulomb, and capacitance 7 e to the minus 3 farad. I don't care what the numbers are. What is the energy stored in this? So it's actually a fairly straightforward problem. So what's given, what's missing? You have charge, you have capacitance, and it says what is the energy stored? The energy stored in a capacitor is 1/2 Q times V. That's the one I have memorized. We don't know V. We also know C equals Q over V. So you got a couple options. There is 3 forms to this energy equation. 1/2 QV, 1/2 Q squared over C, 1/2 CV squared. They all come from just taking this guy on the right and plugging it in. So for example, just to show you what I'm talking about, and then I'll put all 3 versions here. V equals QC. I just rearranged it. I just did a little bit of algebra. If you just chuck that V right there, you get the second equation. 1 half Q, Q, C. So one, you could have all three of the equations written down in all their forms. I don't have them all. You can do that, or you can just solve for V here. V equals Q over C. Take that number, whatever you find. So take Q, bam, put it right there. Take C, bam, put it right there. Find V, put it in there. So it's a fairly straightforward problem. There's no tricks to it. It's just what's given, what's missing. Make it happen. Now, what you do need to be careful of, maybe one of the reasons people miss this, I don't know for sure. If you all go to your formula sheet, so on the formula sheet, there is two equations that say U equals, and it has a Q and a V in it. And I mentioned this to you all before last test as well. So there is U equals 1 half QV, and there's U equals QV. And you're like, what? Why is there two equations that say two different things? One's got a 1 half, one doesn't. The one that I'm highlighting in green, U equals 1 half QV, that's for a capacitor. The one over here that's in yellow, that's for a point charge. If you want the energy of a point charge, QV. You want the energy in a capacitor, 1 half QV. They're two equations for two different things. Throughout this formula sheet, there is many cases where one variable, look at this bottom down here, B equals mu naught I over 2 pi r, B equals mu naught I theta over 4 pi r, B equal, there's a lot that say B equal because they're all used for different things. So that's something to be careful of, y'all. If you just, when you're looking at this formula sheet, this is a good thing to study. Do you know what these equations are used for? That's a very good study strat. Look through this equation sheet and do you know what the equation is used for? For example, this B right here, that's the magnetic field due to a wire. This one is due to an arc of wire. This is a loop of wire. This is a solenoid. We'll talk about the solenoid in a second because that's another question a lot of people missed. There's no dependence upon distance. So, very good strategy, y'all. Look through this and know if you know what they're used for. Because it's kind of like being a mechanic and not knowing what a tool is used for in your drawer. You're probably not going to use that tool because you don't know what it's even used for. Even though you might need that tool for a job. So, this is your toolbox, y'all. These are your recipes. If you want to figure out something, you need the right recipe. Make certain you know what the recipes actually do for you. Especially the ones that look like look for electric field. I have 5 equations for electric field. If you don't know when to use which one for the right purpose, they're all going to look the same. So, check these out. Make sure you know what they're used for. For example, this is the electric field due to a point charge. This is just the definition of electric field, force on a charge. This one over here is electric field due to a sphere, line of charge, plane of charge. We use that one. I actually wrote down the wrong equation. That was silly of me. For an infinite plane, there's a 2. Didn't change the answer. But a capacitor doesn't have the 2 down there. So yeah, great strat, y'all. Look through these formula sheets. Make certain you're very familiar with your tools. Alright, so boom, boom, boom. The last question that a lot of people missed. Again, this one I was a little surprised with. This is the one that most people missed, which I was surprised about because it's fairly straightforward. Well, that's what the numbers show. So, anywho, test 1, there was one more question. Let me make certain I remember exactly. If I don't, that's okay. I'll put one just like it. Alright, so I'm going to give myself a little bit more room because I can fit it here. Why? Why try? Test 1 continued. What was the other question? I think it was this one, and this one is a classic. It was something like this. What happens to the force between two charges if I half the distance between them? Funny enough, I just wrote this exact same question for my high school students? They hate these just as much as you do. This one went on the retake for my students. What happens to the force? And let's clarify. It doesn't really matter if I clarify it. They're charges, but it is an electric force. We'll clarify it's an electric force, though that's the only type that could exist. I guess technically there could be a gravitational force. The answer would actually be the same, which is interesting. All right. What equation? Again, it's a classic. What happens to this if this? We find the equation that relates that. All right. See if you can find it. What happens to the force if I half the distance between the charges? What equation will do that for me? If you chose that one, you did good. Now, that's one step in this. This one is notoriously a little finicky. I use the word finicky. So this is the equation. That's my original force. K, Q1, Q2 over R squared, R distance, same thing. I'll put the R, but my high schoolers get D for distance instead of R. I'm a little nicer to them. What's my new force? My new force, let's call the original 1 and the new one 2. My new force, everything stays the same, but my R gets halved, and this is where you have to be very, very careful. You square that whole thing. You square that whole thing. Why? Because if my original R was 1, let's just say R1 was 1, R2 is 1/2. 1 squared is 1. 1/2 squared is not 1/2. It's 1/4. So whatever happens to R needs to also get squared. And this always throws people off. So we'll do this in steps. So that turns into 1/4 R squared. You pull that 1/4 to the front. You pull that 4th to the front. So Fe, my new force, F2. That 1/4 better stay on the bottom because that's where we found it. 1/1/4. Again, I'm writing it in as many steps as possible to make it very clear. 1/1/4 is not 1/4. If you're afraid of making that mistake, use your calculator. Let it do the work for you. It's 4. And one of the really important skills in physics. Okay.